Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the December meeting of Safe Silver Spring, a community organization established to foster dialogue between law enforcement and the community. We have these quarterly meetings with MCPD 3rd District, and we are glad to have their cooperation. As usual, we hear this evening from our 3rd District Commander Dave McBain, introduce his lieutenants who joined our last meeting: Lisa Engstrom, SunYoung Kim, James Reed, and Tenesha Jensen. They will discuss some of the goings on in the 3rd District and the George Henry and Ida sector, and then we'll open up to questions, and we can have as a broad and extensive conversation as you would like. My name is Alan Bowser. I'm one of the co-chairs of Save Silver Spring, along with Eric Hensel and Yudi Rodriguez. Our other board members are Karoma, Karen Matson, Amy Henchy, who's on the call, Daniel's on the call, Julio Murillo, Daniel Terrelong, who's handling the live streaming, and Jacob Newman, recently named the director of the Silver Regional Center. We encourage you to participate in our online conversations. You can find more about SafeSilverSpring.com, and you can find us on Facebook. As I said, this meeting will be recorded and available on YouTube tomorrow. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Commander Dave McBain, our commander of Montgomery County Police 3rd District, who will lead our presentation this evening. Commander McBain.
Thank you very much, Alan, and good evening to everybody. I appreciate having me and my command staff on the call with you guys tonight. As Alan had indicated, I have a new lieutenant tonight. I'm going to introduce her and let her tell a little bit about herself. But I will say before I do that, it's been some time since I've had all full 4 lieutenants under my command. When I came to Silver Spring in March, I basically had 2 lieutenants, and one had 1 foot out the door in retirement. And over the course of the rest of this year, I'm now upstaffed to my full complement of lieutenants, and I must say that very happy with the team that we have working in Silver Spring. And it also helped me recognize how much they do for me. And we've divided up Silver Spring into the 3 sectors, and also with the newest lieutenant, we have coverage of our midnights. But what's nice about that is we have more of a control over each of our sectors, and the oversight only makes things better as far as our response to issues and the way that we are doing business in Silver Spring. So with that, I'm going to introduce to you Lieutenant Tenesha Jensen. She was just promoted just this most recently in the last couple of weeks. And I'm going to be quiet here and let her introduce herself and let her tell you where she's been in the department and what she's doing.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tenesha. Really happy to be here, joining everyone in this meeting tonight. Very honored to have been recently promoted and selected to represent the 3rd District under Commander McBain's leadership, and with my fellow lieutenants. I mean, I honestly feel completely honored and in probably one of the best positions that I could be in. A little bit about myself. I've been a Montgomery County police officer for the last 23 years. I have held positions. I worked in the 2nd District for a number of years. I worked in our 6th District, which is Montgomery Village, Gaithersburg area. I've been a school resource officer. I've worked in our special victims investigations division in both missing children and runaways, sex assault unit, and domestic violence. Then I was promoted to sergeant about 5 years ago. I returned back to the second district, and for the last 3 years, I've been in charge of our recruitment for the police department. So I've held a variety of positions throughout the department. I've been able to participate and see things from many different angles, and also just working in partnership with the community from a lot of those positions. I'm a native of DC. I attended actually high school here in Montgomery County. I'm a graduate of the Academy of the Holy Cross, and I graduated from the University of Maryland in College Park. So I'm very in tune to our area, to our community. I'm a resident here in Montgomery County. I raised my 3 children in this county. So I, as well as, loving, the area where I'm at, I have a vested interest, just as all of you do, in continuing to make this a safe and livable one. And I look forward to working with you guys in the future.
Cool. Thank you. Tenesha. So as I indicated before, Tenesha is going to oversee, she has other responsibilities, but her main responsibility is going to be oversight of our midnight shifts. We have 2 shifts of approximately 17 officers each, and she's going to do oversight of them. So with that, Alan, we're going to jump right into it. We'll start in our George sector, and we'll move northbound or east or whatever direction it is going towards Howard County. But we'll start talking about our efforts and the things that we're concerned about, the things that we are proud about, the good, the bad, and what we are doing in each of our sectors to deter crime and to respond to your concerns. So I will say that we have seen some upticks in some crimes. We've seen some successes. We've seen a reduction in theft from autos, which is a good thing. Means that people are kind of listening to us in regards to stowing away property, locking up their cars. We're still seeing some auto thefts, and I will say that they still remain about 50% of the auto thefts that we're experiencing. The keys are being left in the vehicle and the cars are running. So we still have some more outreach to do, and we could certainly appreciate if citizens would lock those cars and turn them off. It would help us out. We have experienced a couple homicides up in our Ida sector. I will say that except that we very much are in good positions for arrest on one of them. I believe we've issued warrants for an individual that we're looking for. And actually the one homicide down on November Circle is still very much under investigation, and I don't have much to offer there. With that, I'm going to turn over the conversation to Lieutenant Dave Reed, who oversees our George sector, and specifically of the Central Business District, which obviously is ground zero for a lot of the efforts and things that we're doing in the district. So go ahead and take it, Dave.
Good evening, everybody. I'm glad we're not talking about the snow emergency plan tonight. I'm mentally not ready for that yet. So I'm glad we'll just talk about what's going on down in Silver Spring. We are making great progress, but like the commander alluded to, we still got a long ways to go, and we have our ups and we have our downs. The first thing I'll kind of address is the latest stabbing incident. Obviously, I can't go too much into it, but I know it's on a lot of people's minds. Everybody involved is known, and we're taking care of that, and there's no threat to the community. So I just want to put everybody's minds at ease. So about 2 months ago, when we started this program, we came together, and the commander, we knew we had to do something down in the CBD area. So what we decided to do, the commander gave his information, and we basically ran with splitting our CBD teams. because as you all know, it's about our numbers. We have to move numbers around in order to do a good job. And if you're new to this call and you weren't on it last week, I'll just kind of explain how we are right now. One of our CBD teams, we've run it into our crime suppression unit. And what it is a sergeant and 6 officers comprised of 2 volunteers from shifts. And they are out looking for the violent crimes. And I just wanted to kind of give you a breakdown on how successful they have been. So in 2 months, they have recovered 6 handguns, all fully loaded. They've had 2 armed robbery arrests. They have served 2 felony warrants, 1 for armed robbery in the county. They have recovered 3 stolen vehicles, 2 stolen motorcycles, 2 distribution arrests, and 2 robbery attempt arrests. And 1 was 4 juveniles from the DC that were actually following an Amazon driver. And through a citizen call, they were able to get on scene quickly and were able to take the juveniles into custody without incident. They were in a car ready to do a jump out on the Amazon driver. And in the last 2 consecutive weeks, they have recovered 2 more handguns and 1 seizure of less or just under $100,000 in cash through to a distribution arrest. So they are out there working and they are doing a fantastic job, and we couldn't be more proud. Our other CBD team, what we have done is basically had them on bikes. And what they're doing is they're really upping the amount of traveling they're doing down in the CBD. And basically what they're doing is basically doing about 12 miles a day on the bikes. And they are really upping their working with their loss prevention officers and making sure that they're available in these business checks. And they are actually making a lot of good shoplifting arrests. And I was on a Zoom call earlier today, and actually one of the citizens commented that they had seen them, and one of the loss prevention officers had noticed that they're around more often, and they're actually making a lot of arrests, which is good visibility. We also have our officers that are working on part-times. As you will probably notice around the CBD, they're in strategic locations with their cruise lights on. And so they're doing a fantastic job deterring crime and doing spot checks in our garages. You've probably noticed the Maryland State Police has joined our task force, and they have been down there more often. And we're taking every step that we can through Commander McBain's leadership to make sure that we are well ahead of any potential problems. Last Saturday, we got information that the potential car rally was going to be coming back into the CBD, into 3D. So we called in a whole bunch of officers. Myself and Commander McBain worked till 1 o'clock in the morning Saturday night to make sure that we were ahead of them. And fortunate for us, and unfortunately for Prince George's County, they stayed in PG County and caused a lot of problems over Route 1, but we were really prepared. Our patrol units are doing a fantastic job down there. We are always working with manpower issues, but we really couldn't be more proud about some of the efforts they're doing down there and doing the community work. And you'll see them a lot out there. And the only thing I ask of everybody is the best thing you can do to keep these men and women motivated is, as you pass them, give them a thumbs up, give them a wave. Tell them thank you for what they're doing, because it means so very much to them. And that's what's going on down in the CBD, if anybody has any questions.
All right, thank you, Dave. Something I want to point out about our efforts with this crime task force that we put together. When we did an analysis on when they're working, and when the task force is working and when we have the extra resources downtown, we are seeing a 22.6% decrease in the calls for service. So what that tells me is that our high visibility is having an effect on the overall activity downtown, and the reduction of calls certainly goes to their efforts, but also when we do get the calls, we have a lot more resources that are there that are answering the calls quicker. If you look at a lot of some of the violent crime that we're dealing with, when we're making arrests, we're actually apprehending these individuals in very quickly within minutes. And, that's, I think, critical to the safety of everybody in the downtown area. So we're seeing some positive things there with those efforts. And I'm really happy with how that is going. So I think what we'll do, Alan, is as long as you're good with it, we'll keep going through each sector, and then we'll just take some time to answer some questions at the end. Good?
That's perfect. Thank you.
All righty. With that, we're going to jump over to SunYoung Kim, who is the lieutenant that oversees our Ida sector. She's probably the most happy lieutenant that now that Lieutenant Jensen's here, because she was able to turn over some of her responsibilities from midnights to her. So I'll turn it over to Lieutenant Kim to give an update on the Ida sector.
Thank you, Commander. It's good to see you, everybody. So I saw in chat, some people had asked, not knowing the area and understanding the terminology of George, Henry, and Ida sector. So Ida sector is the northern part of the district. And we are generally from like White Oak area and goes up north to the Howard County line, as well as to the Prince George's County line, and covers largely Calverton, Fairland, parts of Fairland, and some parts of Hillendale, but again, from White Oak and goes up north. So that's the general area of the Ida sector. So just to give you since this is a quarterly meeting, I wanted to give you a couple of numbers, statistics for the fourth quarter up until today. I was able to pull the numbers, and we've had 2 homicides that Commander already talked about. November 21st incident, as well as the November 30th incident. Both incidents there was a media release on it by our department, so any information could be obtained there. And then for robberies, there were 10 incidents of robberies. Now this includes commercial robberies as well as persons robbery. Includes, some of them are weapons, some of them are strong arms, so it encompasses all of them. For aggravated assault, there were 17 incidents. This includes domestic violence related, and in fact, predominantly it's domestic violence incident. In fact, we have just had in the Ida sector, we just had a stabbing this afternoon earlier, again, domestic violence related, and officers were able to respond very quickly, render first aid, put a tourniquet on the victim, and also apprehend the suspect right away and make the community safe again immediately. Commander already kind of alluded to this. Stolen vehicles, we're kind of up on that. In Ida sector, in this quarter, we've had 39 incidents. And then weapons offense, there were 8 incidents. I kind of bring those numbers to light because it's going to go into a lot of the other efforts that our officers have done. So when I talk about the robbery, most recently that a lot of people remember is there was a bank robbery. And again, there was a media release on it. It was up in Old Columbia Pike, Capital One Bank, and it was an armed bank robbery. And actually, that same day, our detectives, officers, specialized units all worked together as a team and actually apprehended the suspect on that case. And he was related to one attempt and another confirmed bank robbery. So he was there was multiple incidents that he was responsible for, and it was a good teamwork by all the everybody involved. They made an arrest. And then there's also incidents of multiple handguns that are multiple shootings. Again, some of them are domestic violence related, but again, when I talk about these, I say it because they're related to gun violence that that officers are seeing more, and as well as also making arrests. For example, there was a robbery at Springbrook High School on November 3rd where a handgun was implied. officers were able to make an arrest, no injuries to any students or, and then officers responded November 4th to a theft and trespassing on Briggs Cheney. Once again, the suspect was armed with a handgun. Again, officers were able to make an arrest with no injuries or major incidents to anybody else. At Castle Boulevard on November 9th, domestic violence related. Again, there was a handgun involved. There was a burglary at Castle Boulevard. This one is a little bit more alarming to us because 4 individuals were involved, 2 juveniles and 2 adults. But when I say adults, that's because they're barely adult. They're 18, 19 years old, still teens. Another, in the group, they were arrested for burglaries, but they were also armed with a handgun. November 25th, domestic violence assault. And again, officers responded quickly and was able to apprehend the suspect. Again, another handgun was recovered. All of this, when I say handgun is recovered, those are all weapons violations associated with it. And then December 2nd, another domestic violence assault. Again, another handgun involved. So that's why I bring up those numbers that we talked about. And then, one positive with the stolen vehicle. While we've had an increase in it, we've also had an arrest on November 27th. 4 suspects were involved, and 3 juveniles, 1 adult, and that closed 3 or 4 cases of stolen vehicles. They were involved in multiple thefts from models as well as stolen vehicles. So those are some of the awesome work that our officers have done. So in terms of in our area, additional things that we're also working on is Midnight Basketball League. We are collaborating partnership with the Montgomery County Recreation Department. And we're really excited about this. We're trying to create a way to engage our young youth, high school students predominantly, to find ways for them to do something healthy and safe and play 3-on-3 basketball for about 6 weeks. That's where our start is right now. We'll start it at the end of January, and it will be at the center of a lot of the violence that is occurring in White Oak area. And we hope to have a positive influence with the students and give them a safe place to hang out on a Friday night, as opposed to somewhere they could get into trouble or somewhere they could be a victim of a crime and whatnot. So we're really excited, and Department of Recreation is also fully engaged and involved, and we're at the planning stages, and we'll probably need a lot of community support to get involved and make this a successful program.
Cool. Yeah, so I just want to jump on the last thing that that Lieutenant Kim was talking about. We've been thinking a lot about what type of community outreach that we can do in the IDA sector, and because we do have a lot of issues, in the enclave apartments and just in that White Oak area in general. And this Midnight Madness basketball seemed to be just a great opportunity for us to work with Park and Recs. And then we're also partnering with the Montgomery County Police Foundation, who's going to support it financially, because we're going to, we're going to create a reversible jerseys. We're going to have some referees. We're going to have a lot of food. But most importantly, I thought this was pretty cool, is not only are we just going to offer them the ability to play basketball in a safe environment, but we're going to take about 20 to 30 minutes of these kids' times, and we're going to sit them down with some people from the community that can talk to them, and we're going to discuss things. The old school was, don't do drugs, but there's so many other things that we would like to talk to these young men and women about in regards to, just focus on what's important in their lives. And so this is going to be a great opportunity. Like Lieutenant Kim said, it's going to run for 6 weeks. We're going to crown a champion, and it's going to be good competition. I'm hoping for some real good outreach efforts there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant Engstrom, who is the lieutenant who oversees our Henry sector. And so take it away.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see a lot of faces from last time and some new people. So I'm Lieutenant Lisa Engstrom, and I oversee our Henry sector. And just a little bit about where that is. That's going to be from down 29 from White Oak, and then down New Hampshire Avenue from White Oak. And I have Hillendale, Oakview. I have down Northwest Park, Quebec Terrace area, Piney Branch. All those areas over toward University Boulevard. So that's just a kind of a snapshot of the area. So we're doing primarily in my area, the property crimes are the biggest problem. However, recently we've had a couple crimes involving firearms that, of course, are very concerning. So we had an incident. This is back in late October, where thankfully a citizen gave us a call and saw some young men playing with a firearm near an elementary school. They called that in, which of course we wouldn't have even known about this had the citizen not stepped up and called in. So again, that's another key point to call when you see something. But officers from IDA and our Henry sector were able to get the tag information quickly. The vehicle was stopped, and drugs and a ghost gun, which are the guns, it's unregistered. You buy the parts and put it together. That was recovered in that incident. And then we did have another shooting in that area, which is over near like Child Street and Lyric Lane. And that was just about a week or two ago. However, that was a targeted event. That was not a random act. The victim has been very uncooperative. And like I said, that was something that's not just a random act in that community. So the property crimes are really my number one. It's week after week, I get these reports, and the theft from autos, the catalytic converters, the burglaries, those are number one in a lot of our areas for property crimes. And the troubling thing, and the commander kind of alluded to this when it comes to the stolen autos, when it comes to the theft of the property from the vehicles are unlocked most of the time, and the property. So while we try to track down these people, we can all do our part by locking up the vehicles, taking the keys, and taking any valuables out of the vehicles. And that really includes tools as well. I've had quite a few thefts of some tools in the area. And then the residential burglaries, several of them were unlocked windows. Now we offer, we can have an officer come out, my community or service officers come out to your home, to your business. We can do a security survey, check for locks that are not working, areas that could use more lighting, are your cameras working? Or if you do have a camera, did it come unhinged and now it's facing the brick wall? So if those are some services that we can provide to make sure that we as residents and business owners are, making ourselves hard targets for any of these things. In addition to that, we have our patrol investigative unit, which we have one detective that he handles really everything that kind of falls in between what a patrol officer would have the resources to handle and what our detective bureau would have the resources to handle. So he's really been tackling a lot of these theft from autos, especially our catalytic converter issue, which you may have all heard about. This is really a regional issue, not just Montgomery County, not just Silver Spring, but he was able to identify a couple suspects, and he is actively working to connect them to numerous cases and secure an arrest in that case. We also did have an abduction call, and I just want to highlight this because our officers really did an outstanding job with this call. A young girl called her mother and said that her boyfriend would not let her leave, that he was holding her. And those officers did an excellent job of tracking down through investigative means, through technology, found this young woman and the boyfriend, and they were able to be interviewed. He was taken into custody, and he did have a he had a fixed blade knife with these, it was like long spikes on the end of it in his possession at that time. So she was found safe and sound. She's received some assistance for some mental health issues, and he's in jail. So I just wanted to highlight the officer's efforts on that case. And then we've established, so for the shootings, for the weapons offenses, for these property crimes, I've established these high visibility zones. So, you know, we get all this data. I've gone through, kind of looked at some areas with some time frames where we're seeing some of these things, and I have my officers going out, being visible, putting on those blue lights, which we're doing that in other areas as well, as I know you've already heard. But we're just being visible. We're talking to community members when we can. We're going on community walks. And, you know, we had a big meeting the other day with the Long Branch community. We're planning walks and events. So with your individual communities as well, please reach out to me, reach out to our community service officers. We'll share our email addresses with you in the chat, or I know Alan has all of our information as well. But please reach out when you're having these events, so that not just on this call quarterly, but when you have your community events, we would love to be a part of that, and just start to build those relationships and have that visibility in the community. So any questions about Henry? I am here, and I want to thank you. And please, like I said, for that beginning, call when you see something. That's just really vital for us to know when the crime is happening, where it is happening, and your little tip could be the difference between you know, someone being taken into custody and or something going unreported. So I want to thank you all for being here. Thanks, Commander.
Thank you, Lisa. So I think I've done a pretty good job about knocking down some questions in the chats. One question that I'll just address with the group, because it's an important and well talked about topic, is Silver Spring outreach teams in regards to mental health, and as in the HHS, or Health and Human Services section. So, you know, this was a big part of a reimagination to kind of get the police department out of a lot of the mental health issues. HHS is still working on, although they've upped the number of social workers that are working in Silver Spring. I believe that they've recognized very quickly that they need to put more bodies in Silver Spring because of just the sheer number of mental health issues we have. Our officers continue to handle a majority of these calls for service. But I will say that we have really done a good job working with HHS in this new relationship that's only going to get better. And for the police, we hope very much we can get out of this. But what we've recognized is there's certain mental health issues that that simply need the police. There's some that it'd be best that we're there. And then there are some that we really have no business being around, and we usually amp things up when we're there. So we're working better with HHS, and my hopes is that as we move into 22, that we start seeing HHS take more control of these situations. I think that will help us out a lot. The homeless situation is it's basically synonymous with our mental health issues. So, you know, we've made recommendations to HHS as far as what we think could help us with this you know, type of activity. And I think that we're going to see some good things going into 22. And then the final thing that I'll just say is we've talked a lot about crime and crime prevention. We haven't talked anything about traffic, and that is still something that we very much do in the county. And we're starting to focus our efforts on not only our major arterial roadways, but also in our neighborhoods. I will say that Lieutenant Engstrom has worked extremely well with the Hillendale community, and we've been up in Hillendale very strong in the neighborhoods, dealing with speeding violations, especially around the elementary schools off of New Hampshire Avenue. I will also say that down in our George sector, Lieutenant Reed has been working with our Central Motors and also with our George sector day work motors for a kind of constant complaint that we're getting on George Avenue at August Drive. And it's in relations to speeding vehicles, but also it has a crosswalk component where there's some concerns about people crossing George Avenue safely. So in both those areas, we've been doing a lot of traffic enforcement, issuing citations and warnings. And the good thing is that not only do you have Silver Spring resources down there, but there's a rotation of our central traffics that come out of headquarters. And on the last rotation where headquarters traffic officers were in Silver Spring, the day work officers focus mainly up in my Henry and Ida sectors along New Hampshire Avenue 29 corridor. And then the evening motors actually focused on George Avenue from the DC line to the Beltway. Both those efforts have resulted in, a lot of, and also it just has a calming effect with their presence out there on the roadways. So with that, Alan, I'll turn it back over to you and we can answer some questions or whatever it is you want.
Thank you, Commander McBain. If people in the audience would like to ask questions of the officers, please use the raise hand function. The bottom of your screen, it says reactions. At the bottom of that screen, it says raise hand, and we will call on you. And anything goes. You can ask them anything. This is a good opportunity to do that. And please take advantage of Lieutenant Engstrom's suggestion about inviting the police and the community service officers to your meeting. I think one of our first questions is going to be from Nicole Weissman. Nicole, are you asking a question?
Hi, I'm Nicole. I've never been to this meeting before. It's really cool that this exists. I just posted in the chat, I live a stone's throw from where those stabbings were yesterday, and I'm just curious. I loved hearing about what you're doing in downtown Silver Spring. Can you share some of the logic of how that ladders up to a reduction in violent crime?
Yeah, so, we started looking at a lot of quality of life issues as well as, violent calls for service. And I see that, in your question, you were talking about the stabbing that occurred yesterday on Ellsworth. It's interesting. So that was not a random act of violence. Those two individuals had, without going too deep into the specifics of the case, they were very much engaged in activities together, and it simply went bad. And they got into an altercation that obviously became very violent, and that one of the individuals passed away last night. But so, some of these things, when they pop up, they don't necessarily affect the public in general, but they're obviously in public, right? And they're visible to the public, and there's a lot of concern about the safety downtown. The reason that we developed the crime task force was to show a high visibility effect downtown. We use data to suggest certain hotspots around the downtown area, the central business district, and we move those officers around based on where we have hotspots. And also we focus not only on these static locations, but those officers also at these static locations are responsible to do garage checks. And so really we look at the data, we look at when crimes occurring, and we try to put the most cops that we can in those times. The problem is that we start running out of cops. It's no secret that, we have a lot of officers that are resigning and retiring, but that's a whole nother topic I don't really want to get into. But, when you have a limited amount of resources, so when I started the crime task force, my main focus, and I think I even said it to this group, is if I'm going to put all these resources downtown, I can't abandon my responsibilities for up in my Ida and Henry sectors. And I don't think we've done that, and we've managed to be able to maintain some sufficient patrols up in those sectors as well.
Thank you, Commander. Lynn, you're up.
Okay, thank you. I put my question in the chat, but I didn't see a response. And that was about the student at Northwood High School that brought ammunition to school. And we heard he was arrested, and there were police cars on my street, but then we never heard any follow-up. And, we've got a lot of elderly people in my neighborhood, and we're just concerned about how do we find out what's going on, and whether, if there are guns in the house and the child has access to this, what should we know about it?
So that actually is in our 4th district. Northwood is not one of my high schools. So I'm familiar with the call. I just don't have any information on it about it. Your commander, if you live in that Northwood area, your commander is Commander.
No, I live in 20910 on Ellsworth Drive, right?
Yeah,
That's
so
where that
incident
lives.
that incident occurred up in the 4th district.
I know, but he lives in my neighborhood.
Yeah, I get that. So a lot of information that you're requesting, I don't have that for one thing, and usually that information is not released as far as investigation about whether there's guns in the house and things like that. We conduct the investigations, but you have to ask yourself, if the incident occurred up by Northwest, I don't even know if the investigators conducted search warrants at that residence. And if that wasn't done, then we wouldn't know. So, I can certainly, figure out or try to answer some of those. I just don't have the information for tonight.
Maybe Commander McBain, you can talk about the incident at Blair High School, which is clearly.
Yeah, so
district.
Blair High School several weeks ago, we had a fight that started in the parking lot. And at some point it became violent. A knife was produced and a student was stabbed. When this incident had occurred, Montgomery County Police were contacted, and we had an extremely fast response to the scene. In fact, why don't I just turn it over to Lieutenant Engstrom? She actually responded and was incident commander for that incident because it did end successfully.
It did, and it was really a coordination with our officers in 3D, and then our community engagement officers, the officers that were SROs that are now in that community engagement division. We responded very quickly to the scene. The victim was given medical treatment right away, and witnesses and cameras were pulled up, and it was just a great collaboration between the schools, the school security, their staff, and our officers. We quickly figured out who the suspect was. There was actually some video as well. And as that was happening, he was returned to the school and taken into custody. So that investigation continues, just because, he is a juvenile, and, it's that fight is not over. You know what I mean? You want to continue and look into that, and the schools and the CEOs are working together to ensure that beef is taken care of, and that it doesn't flare up again with other people in the school.
Thank you, Lieutenant Engstrom. I wonder, we've got Lieutenant Jensen on the call, and we've got your experience. Commander McBain, can you educate us a little bit about the change in the SRO program and the community engagement officers that are taking over those responsibilities, and how is it different from the old system?
Yep. So for everybody that remembers, the SRO program was an actual police officer that worked in the high school, and then also handled the cluster, so of the middle schools and elementary, and would do that. But their primary focus was the high schools. So we always had, usually 5 days a week, we had a police officer in the schools. The decision by our government leaders was made to remove the officers from the school. And they just didn't want them there. So we took those officers. We actually shrunk the numbers just a little bit, and we now call them community engagement officers. Now, the interesting thing there is that these community engagement officers, they work kind of as in teams. So no one is assigned to a school. And in fact, we do not allow, or we encourage our officers, they don't go to the schools in the morning and hang out like they used to. Like at Blair High School, where the officer used to park and hang out with the students in the parking lot every single morning. They don't do that anymore. And in fact, what we do is we require the school system, if they need the police, they need to call either 911 or 279-8000, just like anyone else would. And so what we've recognized, although I don't have the numbers tonight, we get a lot of phone calls from the school system, and we respond to anything from traffic issues with parents dropping off and picking up, all the way to obviously first degree assaults, and everything in between. We are kind of disconnected from the schools, but we do work well with their security component, and we address issues. In our Ida sector several weeks ago, we had an issue with a gun at one of our elementary schools, Burnt Mills, that was on a playground with an individual. Well, because the individual went to another school in the district, a high school, we provided some coverage the next morning just to give the principals a little bit of peace and and calm that we were there. But we are really not at the high schools anymore unless we're called. And so that is the biggest difference and biggest change that we've seen with our response with high schools.
Thank you, Commander. Next question from Kathy McNally. Kathy?
Hi, everyone. I want to thank you all for having this meeting. It's very important to those of us in the community to have this kind of direct contact. I just want to go back to my neighbor Lynn's question about the 15-year-old boy whom I've seen almost every day of his life across the street from me taking I don't know whether he had the gun, but he certainly had someone else have the gun for him if he didn't have it, and he took bullets to Northwood High School. I saw 6 or 7 police cars across the street from me, his driveway blocked by some kind of truck. A lot of us, not only old ladies like me, but a lot of us are concerned. I'm especially concerned about this young man getting appropriate counseling. We don't know where he is, whether we need to worry or not, but I just would like to know what next steps are for our little neighborhood here, right? I mean, we are right beside this family that is obviously also very affected by this. And it came, I think, about 2 weeks before the Michigan case. The parallels were stunning to me, both boys 15, both with access to guns at home. I'm pretty shocked that this meeting was set up without any preparedness for explaining this to us. So I hope there's some plan, even if it's totally inappropriate, to share details with the community, to acknowledge that the community is very concerned. And this is obviously not all of Silver Spring, but when you consider where the home is and where Northwood High School is, and that this latest stabbing incident was on Ellsworth Drive, which is where many of us live, I would hope that you would give us something to look forward to in terms of more information.
Yeah. So again, so first of all, why don't I just get all the information that I can in regards to the incident in Northwood or Northwest, and I will share it with Alan, and he can push it out to the group. But you have to understand, I'm prepared to speak about things that occurred in the 3rd district, and so that was not in the 3rd district. So to say that we wouldn't be sharing it tonight is absolutely exact. Like it didn't occur in the 3rd district. So I'll look up the information. I will contact the 4th district and see what they're doing. And then I will share with you relevant things that I'm allowed to share with you about the case and about the follow-up and about what's going on with the investigation. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If you have questions, please raise your hand. Be glad to call on you. While we're waiting for other questions, I had a couple for the commander. One of them was a comment. So we're very pleased to hear what you said about and what Lieutenant Kim and Engstrom have said about after-school programs, and we're interested in how we can support MCPD in the after-school programs. I don't think they're funded enough personally, and maybe if there's some sort of vehicle for providing some funding, we'd like to make some contributions to that effort. We think there should be a lot more after-school activities and the programs where they had the police athletic leagues. Like when we were growing up, those were important parts of the sort of the community engagement. So please let us know how we can help with the after-school programs. We'd be very interested in that. I wanted to ask a question that was sort of picking up on what Katie was talking about earlier. We have these meetings and we ask you questions about your staffing. I understand not wanting to talk about that tonight. We just saw an article that the class in the police academy was the smallest maybe ever. And that's very problematic. Wondering whether or not your officers in the 3rd district and throughout the county typically get specialized training for de-escalation. I mean, that was a big thing, last summer. Haven't heard too much about it recently. Is that something that your officers regularly have?
I'm going to turn this over to, I think, Lieutenant Engstrom again, because I think, I could be wrong. I might be putting her on the spot, but I know we get the training. Oh, there you go. Dave Reed's raised his hand. He gets it.
Yeah, so I'm one of the adjunct instructors at our academy as well as Lieutenant Engstrom. And I can tell you our academy is second to none. These instructors go out to these classes all the time, and they're coming back with new and improved de-escalation tactics. Every year when we have in service, we go over de-escalation tactics and that was one of the things that actually we had talked about as officers with our concern for losing so many police officers over the years, because it takes time. It takes 5 to 10 years to actually get really good at this job, talking to people and learning how to deal with people. And what we do is we try our hardest to prepare these young officers to come to the road and deal with every scenario. But you also have to understand that we're dealing with scenarios in a controlled environment. Out on the road, it can go south very quickly. But we also, it's often said that police work is never pretty sometimes when we have to do what we have to do. But the officers are trained extremely well. And these are dedicated instructors that know what they're doing, and the officers feel very comfortable. And then when they come out of the academy, they go through to a 16-week field training program where seasoned field training officers continue to teach them not only what they learn in the academy, so what they learn on the road. So I can tell you from experience and seeing firsthand, as not only as an instructor, but as an FTO myself coming out, these officers are very well trained and are really prepared when they come out of the road. Now, like I said, and I don't want you to think that these officers are prepared for every scenario, because they're simply not. We can't foresee what they're going to run into every single day, but they have some of the very best training. And, and let me go ahead and piggyback on another question I saw in here talking about mental health. One of the things that we have really done is our partnership with especially down in Silver Spring is working with HHS and Helping Hands and a lot of interfaith communities, because a lot of the times if you've noticed probably down in the Central Business District of Silver Spring, there's not as many homeless that are out on the road. And this has been a full court press, and I give a lot of credit to the Silver Spring Urban District because Carson Henry has done a fantastic job, and he's trying to keep track of our homeless population, especially as we come into the winter months, because we want to get them as much help as possible. Because like a lot of people know that, you know, having a police officer respond to every scenario is not always the answer. Because sometimes when a police officer responds to a homeless person, sometimes that can instigate things, because just because of our presence, they may think they're in trouble. So what we're doing is, not only are we working on de-escalation tactics, but we're working with our community partners in order to the best way to solve problems, and not just put a Band-Aid on it, but actually solving the problems for the long run. But that's some of the things that these officers are doing every day.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Reed. We've got 3 questions. Tom Dagonia, you go first.
Thank you, Alan. I guess it's really more of a point of information for Ms. McNally. I've got no doubt that Commander McBain is going to follow up on that incident involving the young person involved in that incident. But as far as what mental health resources they'll get, most likely will go to the juvenile court. And once they're in juvenile court, as far as the actual mental health resources that they're provided, there's a lot of confidentiality around that. So I just don't want you to be disappointed when the commander comes back and says, I can't tell you a lot about that, because he may not actually have access or be allowed to share some of that information. But that's one of the things that the Department of Juvenile Service will do. Once the young man comes into contact, is they'll do an evaluation for what needs he has, as well as what the needs are of the family. So that's part of how that process will work.
Thank you, Tom. Next question, Jill Ortman-Faust. Welcome.
Hi, Alan, and I'm here representing Council President Tom Huck, or he was Council President, now he's just a council member as of yesterday, Tom Hucker's office, and who's been very concerned. And one of the things that Tom was advocating for since last spring was social workers in all our schools, starting with our high schools. But the school system and DHHS wanted to wait until the County Executives Committee finished their work before moving forward. We know that it's very difficult to get social workers, which is why Tom wanted to start hiring them last spring. When we talk about our high schools and our students, a lot of these incidents, and I don't know what some graph you have, seem to be committed by students or young people under the age of 18, many of the articles that I've read. And we've all seen numerous articles about how the trauma that COVID brought to so many families. As somebody earlier said, the rec department activities were reduced dramatically. Cofield Center was closed despite Council President Hucker's best efforts to keep it open. What kind of partnerships, and I appreciate the midnight basketball, but there are other people, nonprofits, organizations, mental health groups that are better positioned to do casework and mental health support and intervention than the police officers. What kind of partnerships do you have with MAMSI or any of those kinds of mental health organizations, and how are they working hand in glove with you to do interventions with kids? How do kids know where to go before kinds of violent events take place?
Commander.
Yeah, I don't really have a great answer for you. I know that you know, we have community engagement that deals with some of these issues, and they do functions with our young population. But as far as counseling and things like that, unless one of my lieutenants has specifics, I don't have a specific you know, group or organization that we're working with right now. And I'm sure we do, but I just don't know.
Jill, anything else?
No, that's good. We can follow up on that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as our homeless are concerned, Pathways DC is amazing. And we find that they, when we don't get HHS or Progress Place involved, Pathways DC has been my #1 go-to to deal with chronic homelessness. So that's always been a great, outreach for us. And then also, again, the red shirts, they assist us a lot with the things that we're dealing with on the street. But
yeah, so maybe
again,
Jacob might have an answer for it, but yes, because I'm just, what I hear is that at least some of these youth are already known, like how we're working together to intervene in these situations where we know kids
So a lot of
maybe
the
in vulnerable
resources
positions.
available for students is through the school, through whether they're counselors, staffs, and there's referrals, there's nonprofits, there is NGOs that are very much involved in the school system that offer us many culturally competent programs, as well as providing assistance to lower socioeconomic families as well. So those are all very much embedded in the school systems. And
yeah, and I hear that. I was actually on the school board and we were told about all the time, but then when I talk to students, they have no idea how to have access to these. So I was just curious, like, if the police department was working with them, that might, I don't want to monopolize it, but that might seem to be a good partnership, because silos can oftentimes create barriers to access. So thank you, though.
Thank you, Jill. Next question, Joe Teitelbaum.
Yes, Commander McBain and your lieutenant staff members, I want to thank you for what you're telling us and communicating to us in more ways than one. I'm concerned about you and your police officers on duty and how well they've been able to hold up and maintain their own well-being under the COVID epidemic period that is lengthening as we speak. Do you have the resources to help one another and support one another? And have you had some attrition due to COVID? How can we help our police by supporting them in this situation?
So let's just break down COVID. We do a really good job about our record keeping of active cases and exposure. And we try to limit those ongoing exposures. We have a process put in place where once an officer even has the symptoms, we encourage them to take off and stay away from work until they have a negative test. And then when we do have an officer that comes up that's positive, we have a process or a way of putting them on a leave status for a specific amount of time, until they're healthy, until they're no longer affecting anybody. I will say that with the latest thing that the department, along with all other county employees, has gone ahead and started doing is for those officers that are not vaccinated, we require a weekly COVID test. And that makes sure that those officers who did not get the vaccination are COVID free when they come to the workplace. So those are a couple of things that we're proactively doing. Officers do a good job about taking care of themselves. And what we've what I've noticed is that, when in doubt, we ask them to stay out, right? And we'd rather them err on the side of caution instead of coming to work with the sniffles or not feeling well. So we've managed to do really well. We got better at dealing with COVID as we moved through the pandemic, and we do a really good job about keeping our staffing rates up. And I must say that I think in the whole time, we never went into any really critical phase where we felt we would lose a large section of our enforcement. And we also had things set in place to deal with that. So we're in good position.
And how are the officers feeling about it? How's their well-being and their families doing?
I think, like I say in a number of other topics that I talk about, we're part of this community as well, and we handle it just like you all. It's I think everybody's sick and tired of COVID. I am, but it's going to be here for a while, and we're managing pretty well, and we're wanting to get done with it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you, Joe. Next question, actually, it's the elephant in the room. I'll call on Gene Kavanaugh to raise the issue. There was a long comment in the chat about this issue, and we can have a good discussion about it. Go ahead, Gene.
I'm no elephant. Well, Commander McBain, we did have a little email exchange about an issue that concerns me that, it does seem it is lesser than 15-year-olds with guns and young people being stabbed to death and all the mental health issues we have and robberies and catalytic converters. But we do have this ongoing problem with illegal modified exhaust systems that are the bane of people living on any road where there's more than 100 cars a day.
Right.
And they are loud.
Yep.
And I know all drivers run stop signs and speed, but I would say most drivers of these cars run stop signs and speed, because I sit at my window and watch them run the stop sign outside of my house.
Yep.
Day after day after day. We had our drag racing donut incident a couple of weekends ago through Ellsworth, the neighborhood side of Ellsworth. And I know there were some cars from out of town, but I'm willing to bet a lot of them were local because they live around here. They go by my house at 5:30, starting at 5:30. They're going to jobs. That's great. And, I don't want to target anybody. I want to target the owner of the car. I want to target the car repair shops that do this illegal work. So what's your suggestion? Should we work with our state legislators?
So let me.
I know when there's an illegal modified muffler.
Sure.
I can hear it.
Sure.
And I don't understand why the drivers have to be pulled over to get a repair ticket.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a short-term and a long-term response. The long-term is I really feel like with these modified vehicles, these mufflers, and also with these speed, car meetups and this reckless driving that we've been experiencing regionally, I will say, not making excuses, but regional to the entire state. I think that's going to be something that Annapolis is going to have to address with stronger sanctions, different laws that we can kind of create to address the specific behavior. And so I think there's a lot of things that need to be done there because it's very hard to deal with those individuals. Now, let me address a few things because you were not alone in the, 80 emails that I got about the car rallies and these events. Now, I think sometimes citizens or community members, they get confused with how we issue automated civil violations, and then also how we issue citations for moving violations or where an officer gives a citation. Now, in a civil violation, which is exactly what are automated, so the speed, the red light, and the bus, that's a civil violation because the citation is being issued to the registration, to the owner of the registration. There's no need for probable cause to identify the operator of that vehicle, right? Now, it was suggested, and many people told me, well, why can't you just get a tag number and mail the citation to the reckless driver? It's illegal. Like we're not allowed to, right? So we have to establish who's driving the vehicle. We have to be able to identify that individual in court. So And so it's very hard. We just can't simply do it. Now, again, talking about when these car meetups occur, we cannot pursue. That's a violation of our policy. And we cannot do roadblocks, and we cannot use spike strips. And so there's a whole bunch of do nots for the police. And then we have this group who have a lots of, we can do whatever we want. So it's very hard for us to, we can't ram them, we can't pip them or knock them off the road. And certainly the last thing that I need and anybody wants is for us to start a pursuit that ends with the car jumping the curb and taking out several people, right? So we get hand tied very quickly. What we try to do is we try to get in front of these car rallies, and we get to their next locations. But the problem is we oftentimes just don't know where they're going, and these groups kind of take the path of least resistance. So we try to stay on top of them, and we end up, I kind of jokingly said many months ago, it's like playing whack-a-mole, right? And they pop up in Burtonsville, we whack them down. They go down to White Oak, we whack them down. Then they head into Ellsworth. The problem a couple weeks ago with Ellsworth is 150 cars or 150 people were in that intersection, and those cars were all in that intersection. And what people don't recognize is these groups assign cars to block the road. So if you look at some of those videos, you can see a lot of my cruisers in way out. We simply couldn't get in. And so, that presents challenges. Now, Lieutenant Reed had talked about it briefly, but this past weekend, we were anticipating, well, maybe we're going to see another one of these car rallies. Well, we brought in a lot of resources. I mean, a lot. We brought in officers from all over this county because Silver Spring is definitely a hotspot for these. And I believe because these car people talk and they send out feelers, they send out cars to see where police are in DC, PG, and Montgomery. And I really think, because I actually got a phone call and was told that George Avenue looked like a Christmas tree on Saturday night because there were so many blue and red lights out on that highway. And they went to PG County, and let me tell you, they destroyed PG County, and they lit fires and they set off fireworks, and PG experienced exactly what we did 2 weeks ago. Now, I'll tell you, I was quoted, and I did say in an interview to WTOP, during that incident, there was no property damage and there was no personal injury. And we stayed on top of that group, and we ran them into PG County where they set fires. And so it's not an awesome win, but I call it a win when I don't have anybody hurt and property damage destroyed. So, but again, we addressed it this weekend, and I think we were successful in just keeping them away. It's going to be something that's going to be, an ongoing process of being able to stay in front of these things. To talk about your mufflers, again, I feel like Annapolis is going to have to enact some laws, giving us the authority to do other things with mufflers. I don't think it's always just going to be a police officer issuing an emergency repair order. And I understand that they are annoying. And I can tell you that every commander in Montgomery County, and quite frankly, every jurisdiction in the state of Maryland is trying to figure out how we're going to deal with these things. So I don't really have a great answer for you, only that, we try to, we issue a lot of citations. We stop a lot of vehicles for these violations, but it seems like, just like you said, for every one we stop, there's 10 more that go by. And I don't know where we are with being able to prevent shops from installing these mufflers. But I really think, this is an Annapolis issue.
What can we do as citizens? Do you think we should try to talk to the drivers? They live.
Oh, no, I don't want you talking to the drivers. I mean, I don't really know who they are, but I just don't think that's the answer.
I wave
I don't
my
think they
middle
really.
finger, but they don't respond.
Yeah. It's tough. Now, look,
Yeah.
I don't want to go super deep in this, but when over the last year and a half, it's no secret that police were under fire for a whole bunch of stuff, right? And I don't believe at all it was fair. And I think that all of a sudden everybody was like, we don't want police doing this. We don't want police doing that. Well, guess what? Our police officers said, okay. And I think that's exactly why you see a rise in violent crime. I think that's why you see a rise in traffic offenses. And then all of a sudden, everybody now wants the police to come back and do it the way we used to do it. Well, guess what? The cops are a little hesitant to re-engage. And that's something that we really are working with our police officers on, but you can't blame them because, these guys, and I've said this many times before, they are not going to be the cop that's going to be on the 5 o'clock news, right? Because people are very quick to point out when we do something wrong and very, it's volatile, right? And we're in some challenging times right now. So yes, we need to re-engage, but it's just not that simple. And we continue to work on those issues as well.
We know recently that the governor of New York just signed legislation that addresses the modified mufflers, and we probably will see some kind of similar legislation in Maryland, which could be helpful for the police.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions? Raise your hand. There was a question in the chat. I always raise this issue. This time somebody else has raised the issue, which is, can you please address the open drug sales in the neighborhoods in the Henry sector, and if anything is being done to control it? And I would add parenthetically, in downtown Silver Spring, where you can just walk through Veterans Plaza and see people at least selling pot and of course smoking pot.
Yeah, so if you want to talk about heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamines, I would say that our county council and our county executive are all for officers arresting those individuals. And when you talk about marijuana, they're not. It's a quality of life issue. I brought it to the attention of both the executive and the council, and they have some differing opinions of the use of marijuana in public. Marijuana is a civil violation. The small, possession of less than 10 grams, and then also the use in public. We kind of treat it just like we do with drinking in public. But where we see problems is, we're not making a criminal arrest for the marijuana possession. That's civil. But it's when we ask for identification and they refuse to give us the identification, and then the situation goes downhill from there. And then we usually see a resistance and we see an assault and battery on officers. And so when we make arrests, we're not making the arrests for the marijuana, we're making arrests for the actions as a result of stopping somebody for possessing or using the marijuana in public. It is a quality of life issue. I don't think anybody should have to sit around Veterans Plaza and smell, burning marijuana. It's annoying. But again, it's my officers. I mean, I'm trying to be nice here, but nobody wants us locking people up for marijuana, right? Except for maybe you guys. And I would suggest that if that's what you want, you should be vocal.
We appreciate the candor, Commander. Everybody, we're going to go to 8:53. Let me take this opportunity to sort of a public service announcement that the Montgomery County Civic Federation is going to meet virtually on December 13th at 7:30. And our guest is Montgomery County Police Chief Marcus Jones, who has been quoted in several local news outlets about Montgomery County policing. So if you're interested in the policing issue and you'd like to ask questions of Chief Jones, that's Monday, December 13th via Zoom at 7:30. You can find the link information at the Civic Federation's homepage, montgomerycivic.org. We've got a couple more minutes. Anybody else have any questions? I would just make a note. I think Lieutenant Engstrom made the comment about driving, sort of engaging the community in her sector, the Henry sector, and she was talking about driving, the cars driving with the blue lights, just so the community knows that the cars are there. We would appreciate some attention in the George sector, especially in our East Silver Spring neighborhoods that have problems that pop up all the time with the speeding, the mufflers. We had the pellet gun shooting earlier this summer. So we would really like to see just showing the flag, periodically as your officers perhaps drive from the 3rd District headquarters to downtown Silver Spring. And that would be really helpful and show that you guys are listening to us.
Since we're just about to exit, if I can just interrupt for 1 second, Alan, I just want to thank Commander McBain for his service. I know that our office has worked very closely to him since he's come into that position, and we really appreciate his availability and instant responsiveness. So thank you so much for your leadership. And Jacob, I know, is new to his position, but his suggestions are really good. So hoping we can make some of those connections in our community. Just passing on not only all the amazing constituents here, but folks have also said that they used to see a police car on the end of the block in downtown Silver Spring that was positioned there at least on weekends, if not, all the time. And that encouraged good choices. It wasn't like they were making arrests, but it just encouraged people to make better choices about their activities in that area. Is there a reason that police car is no longer positioned there?
Where, so where exactly?
Right in front of City Place by the Regal Theater, right where
So-
the street is closed off.
Yeah, so actually on Friday and Saturday nights, as part of this task force, we actually have 4 static cars, 4 positions in downtown. One would be Fenton and Bonifant. We have a couple locations along George Avenue, and Lieutenant Reed could probably say the other location. I'll let him speak here in a second. But what we do is, we have a lot of bike officers in Veterans Plaza. So I don't know if I know since March, I've never put a car there at that specific at that position. But I do look at the data and try to pick locations where we see, violence. In the chat, Fern had brought up, that because several months ago, we had a couple shootings right down there by the Safeway, which multiple gunshots were fired, 2 incidents back to back. I'll tell you that because I just discussed this in another meeting with a group, but I spoke with my detectives about that just Monday, and nobody came forward with information on those shootings. And then the one where the individual was shot, we really haven't made any headway with any suspect there. We don't have any good leads of individuals from those shootings, but I will tell you where we start seeing success or where we're having success is in the ballistics. And we put a lot of effort in the collection of the bullet casings so that we can do track, where those guns originated. And also what happens is that gun will be used somewhere else. And then once somebody's caught with that gun, we can then start backtracking and developing suspects in cases. So I'm going to let Lieutenant Reed answer the question about our static positions, Jill, and then we can discuss what that car looked like in the past, and maybe we go back to something like that.
Yeah, if we could talk about that, and then at some point, because I know we want to end, but also cameras have also been suggested from constituents. If there's more cameras in the area, that also might just discourage activity.
So before Lieutenant Reed goes, I will tell you that the stabbing and homicide that we had on Ellsworth yesterday, cameras were instrumental in that. And we were reviewing cameras within minutes of being on scene, and we were able to develop a lot of good information regarding the dispute. Like, I know I was comfortable explaining to you guys tonight that wasn't a random act of violence, because we had camera footage from different locations in downtown showing these guys together. So, cameras are, I think we're definitely looking at where we can develop or put more cameras, but what we have now, we're really using well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lieutenant Reed.
Yeah, so the location you're talking about, we've never had an officer stationed there. What we do is for our patrol units and our CBD teams, we encourage them to go to different locations that are high visibility when they're working on reports, say, when they've taken a call. And that's one of the areas that they can pull over, and it serves two purposes. It gives them an area they can write the report where they can pull their car over, but it's also high visibility. When we're talking about these static positions, we work with our crime analysts and trying to figure out the best way to deploy our resources, because we are deploying 4 officers on an overtime position each day. And to be honest with you, they're getting a little bit burned out. So we were like, we have to figure out a place to put them. And the Safeway parking garage was one of them, on along Georgia Avenue at the bars, because you nailed it on the head. We put a car out there, so when somebody comes out intoxicated, they're thinking, oh, I better make a good choice, say in front of down from Society or some of these other hookah lounges. So that way, when they come out, hey, I better make a good choice because there's a police officer there. That area around Veterans Plaza is pretty well taken care of by our CBD teams, our bike teams, and our patrol officers, because they work, it's a partnership. It truly is, with all the teams down there. The officers know where everybody else is. So it's like a basketball team. We'd all sit on the same bench. We've got all 4 corners of the court covered. So that way, if anything happens, we can respond. And they're strategically located right next to a garage. So at the top or the bottom of the hour, when they can, they'll do a run through of the garage and then come back to that location. So that's how come sometimes you see an officer there, sometimes you don't.
Thank you, Lieutenant Reed.
Thank you.
We've come to the end of our hour. As I said, this program has been recorded and live streamed, and we'll put it up on YouTube as early as tomorrow. I want to thank Commander David McBain, Lieutenant Engstrom, Kim, Reed, and Jensen. Welcome, Lieutenant Jensen. And thanks to all of you for participating in this program. If anybody wants to support Safe Silver Spring and our work, please email me, alan.bowser@gmail.com, and we will bring you into the fold. So thank you very much, Commander McBain. Always a pleasure. Look forward to seeing you. And looks like next year we'll do our quarterly meetings in February, May, October, and December. So we'll schedule those and look forward to getting together again. So thank you, everybody. Good night.
Happy holidays, everyone.